إخوانكم أو بيوت أخواتكم أو بيوت أعمامكم أو بيوت عماتكم أو بيوت أخوالكم أو بيوت خالاتكم أو ما ملكتم مفاتحه أو صديقكم ليس عليكم جناح أن تأكلوا جميعا أو أشتاتا فإذا دخلتم بيوتا فسلموا على أنفسكم تحية من عند الله مباركا طيبة كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تعقلون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On this occasion, we are celebrating the birth anniversary of our 10th Holy Imam, Ali al-Hadi, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We extend our congratulations to the Imam of our time. Indeed, the grandfather of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam is the Imam whom we are celebrating tonight, Imam al-Hadi, salamullahi alayhima. We also extend our congratulations to the Maraji', to the Mu'mineen and Mu'minat, and indeed to the whole of humanity, for the birth anniversary of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam is an anniversary that the whole of humanity can celebrate in. If you could seek 3 areas of development within our community, what would they be? If you had a wand and you could wave it and you say that our community evolves, improves, diversifies in any 3 ways, what would those 3 ways be? How would you want the community to organize itself? How would you want the community to be able to develop in front of you such that after you, you know the community is protected and will continue on in a strong way for generations to come? When you take a step back and look at the lives of our 12 Imams, alayhim as-salatu was-salam, you will find that actually you can divide their periods into 3 categories. Our ulama say that you can divide the period of our 12 Imams into 3. The first is the era of protecting Islam from destruction from its enemies. The second era is the era of intellectual expansion at the hands of our Imams alayhimus salam. And the third is the issue of leadership and organizing the community in such a way that it could prepare itself for the times in which the Imams were to be under lengthy arrest, and eventually the period of Ghaybah al-Sughra and Ghaybah al-Kubra of our 12th Imam, Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-Sharif. From the time of our first Imam to our 4th Imam, salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, they had to protect Islam from being destroyed altogether. It is obvious to state that the tyrants Khulafa, especially those of Banu Umayyah, had one sole job, and that was to destroy Islam altogether. Famously, Yazid bin Muawiyah said in his statement when the head of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was in front of him, no revelation came, Muhammad played with the kingdom of Arabia. This is the lines of poetry from Yazid bin Muawiyah. Clearly there was never a belief, and all they wanted was to be able to regain the power of Arabia back under the Quraysh, specifically under Banu Umayyah. And so everything the first to the 4th Imam, salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, did was to protect and preserve Islam from destruction. And of course, Imam Ali alayhi salam's way had to be slightly different to that of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. And his way had to be slightly different in protecting Islam from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, which was different to that of Imam al-Sajjad salamullahi alayhim ajma'een. The first set of Imams protected Islam. The second set of Imams expanded Islam in such a way that it gave it its intellectual understanding and was able to rebut and respond to the various outside influences that were entering into Islam. The 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th Imams, salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, expanded on fiqh, expanded on theology, expanded on philosophy, and rebutted those systematized attacks on Islam, which were particularly in the intellectual fields. For example, you had the Christian theology and the domain entering into Islam and trying to influence. You had Greek philosophy trying to influence. You had Indian heritage trying to influence, and so on. And the tyrant caliphs went out of their way in order to be able to bring in the languages of foreign abodes, the books of foreign abodes and libraries into Islam in order to confuse the people of the time and for the purpose of trying to find a flaw in the Imams alayhimus salam. Maybe they don't know how to be able to respond to Aristotle. Maybe they don't know how to respond to Socrates. Maybe they don't know how to be able to deal with this particular philosophy. And all of this was brought in order to be able to split the Muslim Ummah. The second era of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam was to respond in accordance with the intellectual provisions that Islam needed. What is very interesting is that, as you know, from the time of the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th Imams, there were splits amongst the Shi'as. We started to talk about this last time. There were a great number of splits. But after the 8th Imam alayhi salam, there are no splits in Shi'ism. Have you noticed that? You have, for example, the Zaydi Shi'a. You have, for example, the Bohora Shi'a. You have the Ismailiyya Shi'a. But once you get for the 8th Imam, everybody is 12 Shi'a. Everybody remains with the Ithna Ashariya. Why? Because the 8th Imam spent so much time ensuring the aqa'id of the Shi'a was protected that even by the time they got to the 9th Imam, yes, a few of them were shocked that there was a young 7-year-old boy who could now be the Imam, but they were prepared well enough to understand how to go back to the Imams and respond to the questions of their time. From the 8th Imam, there are no splits in Shi'ism that sustained. Everybody returned back to the 12ers. And this shows you that there was an intellectual understanding that was taking place. But from the 9th, 10th, and 11th Imams, salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, the challenges shifted. And the particular legacy that the Imams of the 9th, 10th, and 11th, and the 12th coordinated and established was one principle. And that was the principle of how to organize and sustain a community in the absence of its Imam alayhi salam. There would be, from now, the times in which the Imams would have great difficulty in access to their Shi'a, and vice versa, their Shi'a would have limited access to the Imams of their time. Either they were due to be under actual arrest, under house arrest, under great degrees of spying, or indeed by the time the Ghaybah came, that they would have no access to their Imam at all. And so the Imams worked hard in this period to be able to establish systems of protection. And those were through organizing the community, that in the absence of the access to the Imam, the community knew how to be able to deal with the matters in front of them. Sometimes those were leadership battles amongst the Shia. Sometimes there were issues of how to be able to deal with the finances of the community, the collection of the khums. Sometimes it was how to be able to get a message to the Imam and hear back from the Imam. The Shia community needed to be organized in such a way that very quickly, in the short time between the short lifespans of the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th Imams, the community of Shias could manage themselves going forward. And this was the urgent requirement of the day. Arguably the best Imam to have done this was our 10th Imam, Ali al-Hadi, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. And he had the greatest opportunity to be able to structure the Shia community around him in a way that they knew how to be able to deal with the challenges of their time, and they could be semi-independent from their Imam. To the extent, as I will show you in some of these ahadith, the Imams would actually tell his Shia, do not contact me. If you have access to your representative in your region, do not go to me. His word is my word. His decision is my decision. And if he tells you this is the way, it is as good as my way of telling you that this is the way. Can you imagine for the first time that an Imam saying this? Compare this much to the examples in Nahj al-Balagha. Imam Ali alayhi salam often writes to his wukala, so often, so regularly, asking for updates, asking for information, guiding them step by step by step. These were still burgeoning mu'mineen, as great as they were, as great as those governors were on behalf of Imam alayhi salam. The Imam is very much in direct contact, telling them step by step how to go. Now, after several generations, there are Shi'as who are so remarkable, the Imam can tell his Shi'a and say, don't ask me, don't write to me, don't send me your khums, send it to the regional representative. His decision is my decision. This is how much development has taken place in the thinking of the Shia. And of course, the middle pin of that were the middle group of the Imams that have been teaching so much of the fiqh, of the theology, of the ahkam, and how to be able to manage these situations. By the time it comes to our latter Imams and our 10th Imam, the Imam has impressed upon the Shia his confidence in the leadership after him that can take care of the matters to protect the Shia community in his absence. This is what we want to study this evening in honor of our 10th Imam, Ali al-Hadi, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. I asked you at the beginning of the discussion, if you could pick 3 ways to be able to improve the community, what would that be? We'll come back to that question a little bit later on. What I want to demonstrate is how much the Imam impressed upon his Shia the importance of certain principles. The principles of coordination between ourselves, the principles of good coexistence between ourselves, the principles of good words between ourselves, and so much that we were able to rely upon each other as a family, as a community unit that ensured our protection. There's a verse I want to be able to start with to be able to demonstrate this from the Quranic perspective. It is truly an interesting verse. Open your Qur'ans, inshallah, to chapter number 24 of the Quran, Surah An-Nur, verse number 61. Jazakumullah khair. Let's read it, and I really want you to tell me what you think of this verse. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Laysa على الأعمى حرج ولا على الأعرج حرج ولا على المريض حرج ولا على أنفسكم أن تأكلوا من بيوتكم أو بيوت آبائكم أو بيوت أمهاتكم, and so on. There is no blame on the blind man, nor on the lame, nor on the sick, nor on your own selves, if you eat from your own houses. Huh? It's a bit of a strange verse, isn't it? There's no blame on you if you eat from your own houses. Continue reading. وَلَا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَن تَأْكُلُوا مِن بُيُوتِكُمْ. There's no problem if you eat from your own houses. أَوْ بُيُوتِ آبَائِكُمْ أَوْ بُيُوتِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ, or if you eat from the houses of your fathers, or if you eat from the houses of your mothers, أو بيوت إخوانكم, or if you eat from your brothers' houses, أو بيوت أخواتكم, or from your sisters' houses, أو بيوت أعمامكم أو بيوت عماتكم, or if you eat from your paternal uncle's houses or your paternal aunt's houses, or your maternal uncle's houses or your maternal aunt's houses, or even if you eat from your own friends' houses, أو صديقكم. Now, I'm sure many a times you've read this, right? Whenever you read Surah An-Nur, or for example, Shahr Ramadan comes, you've all got to sit together and you've been reading these verses. You might have been in English, you read it. Have you ever thought about why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reveal such a verse to you? Just think about this. Revelation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to you about serious issues. Right? He's telling you about Pharaoh and Moses. He's going to tell you about the day of judgment. He's going to tell you about the signs of the end of time. Now Allah is telling you, there's no problem if you eat from your own houses. Allah, serious. I know I can eat from my own house. I come down every morning. I get the milk out. I get the Frosties out. I get the toast out. I get the Nutella out. I get the chai out. What do you mean there's no problem? There's no problem if you eat from the houses of your fathers and your mothers. You say, of course, but I go all the time to my father's house for food. There's no problem if you eat from the houses of your uncles. There's no problem if you eat from the house of your aunties. There's no problem if you eat from the houses of your friends. Surely, our minds would go, Ya Allah. I mean, there's only so much space in the Quran. I mean, are you really revealing a verse like this to tell me this? There must be something serious going on here. There must be something quite intriguing going on here. And as you know, the Quran, sometimes it tells you things which are very obvious. Sometimes it tells you things which are actually trying to make you think and ponder. Shift your mind and really make us take time over the reality of revelation itself. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for all eternity, reveal this verse and capture it for us? The crux of this verse is that when it comes to our family units, there is supposed to be an organization between ourselves that allows us to have this ease and this freedom between ourselves. That there's this coexistence between ourselves, that there's this regular interaction with ourselves, such that it's so easy for me that in the same breath as it's easy for me to come down in my own house and go to my own kitchen, it is as easy for me to walk into the house of my father and my mother and my brothers and my sisters and my uncles and my aunties and even my friends, that I'm able to go into their houses and have a meal with them just as easy as it is for you to do the same things with me. That is the level of cooperation, coordination, and ease by which the ummah is supposed to live with themselves. And it starts with the family unit. You see, if the family unit cannot coordinate in that way, what chance is there of a community to be able to coordinate so easily? Can you see that? And if the community cannot coordinate and coexist with such ease and cooperation and friendliness and easy exchange of one another, how can the ummah cooperate in such a way? Where does it start? It starts with me and you. Here we are complaining that the nations of the Muslim ummah cannot even speak with each other. By principle, can we do it with our own family members? SubhanAllah. This is why this verse was revealed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you there should be no problem at all you entering into the houses of any of your family members, nor they entering into yours and being able to sit and have a meal. That is at the level of ease and coordination and cooperation you should have. Even amongst your own friends, it should be to that level. How easy it is for me to walk into my kitchen, it should be as easy for me to walk into yours. I'm coming over for chai tonight, huh? And similarly, vice versa, you come into my house. It's not an open door policy, but the coordination, the trust is there between ourselves. Now when you reread that verse, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? We begin to open up doors of thinking as to how we are supposed to be coordinating with ourselves. At the time of our 10th Imam Ali al-Hadi, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh, the Imam alayhi salam organized his community in such a way that he ensured that the community had models of hierarchies. There were 4 regions of the Muslim Ummah. Every region had a lead wakil, and then every city had its sub-wakala, its different representatives. And there was a structure that the Shi'a was supposed to go to the local wakil could go to the regional wakil, and the regional wakil could go to the Imam. And this streamlined the process for everything, be it istifta'at, questions, or be it the collection and the dissemination of khums. The Imam himself would tell his Shi'as, do not come from across regions to give me money, give it to your local wakil, and I trust that they will be able to disperse this in the right way amongst yourselves. This is why we have the system that is even set up like this until today. Where did we get this from? We got it from certain examples that come to us from our ahadith. So I want to mention some of these points to you and I for us to be able to appreciate. To mention some of the regions and some of the letters that the Imam used to send to his wakils in order to be able to establish this. To show you how the local leadership used to work amongst the local communities. So there was 4 regions, just to mention them in brief, and I'm sure you can all picture in your mind's eye the ummah and the geography of the Muslim ummah at that time. The first region was across central and northern parts of Iraq. So Baghdad, Madain, and Kufa were one region. And the region, or the reason for that being one region, was because of how heavily populated it was with Shia. As you know, at that time, Baghdad was the capital, wasn't it? And as you know, the 7th and 9th Imams, salamullahi alayhima, are buried in Baghdad, Madain, and Kufa. And of course, you know the importance of the history of Kufa. One region. The second region was southern part of Iran and southern part of Iraq, Basra and Ahwaz. These were two cities that coordinated as one region, and they had locally their representatives and they had regionally one representative. Another area the Imam divided the Ummah into was in the center parts of Iran, which was Qum, Hamadan, and Ray. And then the 4th part of the Ummah was the remaining parts, which was Yemen, Hijaz, and Misr, all the way up to Egypt. So from the southernmost points of Arabia, all the way through Arabia up until Egypt. These were the last points, and again, they had local representatives, and then they had one representative that oversaw the entirety of it. Let me mention to you some hadith from our 10th Imam alayhi salam, and the way in which he used to firstly impress upon his Shia the importance of this system of organization. Our 10th Imam alayhi salam said the following hadith: إِذَا أَشْكَلَ عَلَيْكَ شَيْءٌ مِّنْ أَمْرِ دِينِكَ. If you have any ishkal, any questions, any problems in the matters of your deen, بِنَاحِيَّتِكَ, in your region, فَاسْأَلْ عَنْ عَبْدِ الْعَظِيمِ الْحَسَنِ. Ask my wakil, Abdul Azim al-Hasani. So the Imam here is sort of prohibiting questions coming to him directly. He is specifically saying, now by the way, Abdul Azim al-Hasani was the representative for central Iran. Qum, Hamadan, and Ray, he was the representative for that region. So he's directly saying, don't ask me, ask the questions to the representative. Now at times, companions used to travel specifically to give khums to the Imam, and travel from across regions to be able to give khums to the Imam. The Imam actually forbade this. The Imam said, don't do this, give the money to my representatives. They will spend it locally in the region because they are supposed to know what the needs and the challenges are locally to them. Another hadith from Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam. Amma, no, Amma, innaka law zurtuka qabra Abdul Azim indakum lakunta kaman zar al-Husayn alayhi salam. Shi'as used to travel to Karbala, do the ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, and then travel to see Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam in Samarra. As you know, they're fairly close to each other. When we go on ziyarah, we take a few hours by coach, maybe a couple of days it would have been at that time to travel. The companions used to go to the qabr of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam and then go to visit the Imam of their time. Imam says, "Law zurtaka qabr Abdul Azim." If you were to visit the site of Abdul Azim al-Hasani, where he is located and where my representative is, لَكُنْتَ كَمَنْ زَارَ الْحُسَيْنِ, it would have been the same thawab as you had visited Imam al-Husayn. I'm trying to organize you. Do you not understand? You don't need to travel all the way to me in Samarra to give me khums, to ask me questions. I'm trying to organize you as a community. Go to your local representative, and it would have been the same thawab as you have visited Aba Abdullah al-Husayn, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. What time is it? Good. Couple more examples just for us to be able to get a flavor so that you know how much the Imam tried to organize his community and the types of examples that were there from the hadith. Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam wrote a letter to Ali ibn Bilal in Baghdad. So now this letter comes to him, and as a wakil, as a local wakil in the city of Baghdad, so from Samarra to Baghdad, he's writing a letter. He now wants to tell him, I've replaced the regional wakil. Right? As I said to you, there were local wakils in each city, major city, and then there were regional wakils. He's writing to Ali ibn Bilal, the local wakil, and saying, I'm replacing the regional wakil. To Ali ibn Bilal in Baghdad, I have appointed Abu Ali instead of Ali ibn al-Husayn Abdul Rabih as the regional representative. The reason for him is that he is most qualified, and I found none better than him. Inform the Shi'a of this decision. You see, he's now telling the Wakil of Baghdad, tell the Shi'a of Baghdad, inform them of this decision. You must obey him, and you must give him your collections of funds, your monies. So Shia give to Ali ibn Bilal, and Ali ibn Bilal goes upwards to the wakil of the time. One last hadith to be able to demonstrate this, because I think it's quite interesting to see these hadith and collect them and see how the Imam dealt with this particular matter. So I'm quoting to you from Al-Kafi. So I'm reading to you from Al-Kafi, and this is hadith 838, if anyone wants to be able to note it. So the hadith comes from the following chain. Al-Husayn ibn Muhammad narrated from Al-Khayrani, who narrated from his father the following. My father was a security guard at the door of Abu Ja'far. So this is the 9th Imam alayhi salam. This is the title. Sometimes in history books, in Shi'a history books, they don't give you the name of the Imam, they will give you the title of the Imam. Abu Ja'far was the 9th Imam, and Abu al-Hasan al-Thalith is the 10th Imam. Okay, Abu al-Hasan, the first one is Abu al-Hasan, Imam Ali alayhi salam. And then you have Abu al-Hasan the second, and then you have Abu al-Hasan the third. My father was security guard at the door of the house of Abu Ja'far, to serve the task for which he was assigned. So he used to screen the people coming in and out to protect Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Isa, this is a huge companion. Many of our ahadith comes from this companion. In fact, such a number of blocks of ahadith come from this man that times, someone like Al-Kulaini, the compiler of Al-Kafi, would just say, a group of our companions narrate from Ahmad ibn Isa or Ahmad ibn Muhammad al-Isa, because he's so famous as a companion. Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Isa would come every day at dawn for information about the health of Abu Ja'far, Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. A messenger would come and go between Abu Ja'far and my father, meaning the guard, the bodyguard of the house. A messenger would come and go between Abu Ja'far. Upon the arrival of the messenger, Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Isa would leave, and my father would remain with the messenger privately to be able to discuss matters. One night, I went out, the narrator of the hadith is saying, the son of the guard of the door. One night I went out, and Ahmad also left the meeting. My father and the messenger remained in complete privacy. Ahmad, however, walked around the meeting place in such a way that he could listen in to the conversation. The messenger said to my father, "Your master, alayhi salam, sends you greetings of peace and says to you, I am leaving this world. And the task of divine authority goes to my son Ali al-Hadi. His rights upon you after me will be the same as my father's rights were upon you before me." The messenger then left, and Ahmad came back to his place asking, "What did he say to you?" My father said, "He said good things." Ahmad said, "I heard what he said. Why do you hide it?" Because they were scared as Shi'as at that time. I'm skipping part of the hadith, and I'm coming to the point of what happened next. At this point, when the Imam needed to have his, who was being appointed after him, narrated, at this point, he said, "You must keep this testimony. Perhaps we will need it one day, but do not make my testimony of the appointment of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam public before the time in which it is supposed to be. In the morning, my father, the guard who saw this event, my guard wrote down the text of the appointment of Imam al-Hadi and sealed it in 10 envelopes. 10 different envelopes of his hearing the appointment of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam were written down. He sent them to the leaders of the community and told them, if my death takes place before I tell you to open this message, then know that you should open it at the time of my death in order to learn about the appointment of Imam al-Hadi after me. The point I make is, the bodyguard, the guard of the door, heard the appointment of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, wrote it in 10 letters and sent it to 10 leaders across the area, across the region. That's how it was dispersed at that time. To organize the Shia community was in that particular way. Now this should be sufficient for you and I to understand the picture of what is going on at that time. What I want to ask you was this question. What do you think that our community needs to be able to organize itself, to improve itself, to have a longevity in itself? The Imams were so committed to ensuring that the Shia understood communication between themselves, understood cooperation between themselves. The Quran talks about the basis of cooperation is that you should be able to go into the houses of your own family members, your own friends, and vice versa. The Imams organized the Shia community in such a way that at times he would forbid people coming to him and say, if you visit the wakil of mine and organize yourselves locally, the thawab is if you had gone to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Can you imagine? Just for us to be able to organize ourselves properly, Imam placed the thawab of the ziyarah of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Listen to this hadith. Hadith from our 10th Imam, Ali al-Hadi, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Allahumma salli. Imam, it's a very famous hadith from our 10th Imam. Imam says the following: Ad-dunya suqun. The world is a marketplace. What do you do in a marketplace? When you go to a marketplace, people buy, they sell. They want to sell something, they want to buy something, they want to be able to make a profit. Ad-dunya suqun. Rabiha fiha qawmun. A community will reap benefit from this marketplace. وَخَسِرَ آخَرُونَ. But there are other communities that will fail in this marketplace. Can you see that? The Shia community is not supposed to be amongst those who fail in this suq. We're supposed to be those who have rabiha, whose profits increase, who become stronger, who become more organized, who improve, who evolve. This is how the Imam set us out. This is how the Imam spoke about matters in his time. So again, I ask, if you said what would be 3 things that our community needs to be able to improve, to strengthen itself, what would it be? The concern of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam for you and I, especially in his time, was to ensure that we were organized, that we were cooperative, that we understood how to be able to organize ourselves properly. Think about this very carefully. I'll give you an example of how one might think about the need of improvement in our own communities. It might be, for example, that you will say that still a lot of the work of our communities falls on the shoulders of the same servants of the community year after year, decade after decade. That if you observe that it tends to be the same people in all communities. It might be that you say in our communities we need to be able to have more community volunteers. You might say that's something that's needed. We need to highlight it. That's how we would strengthen ourselves to make sure that it lasts. Because if it is actually a dwindling numbers, if yesterday there were 20 community volunteers and today 10 and tomorrow 5, whilst the community grows and the needs grow, the number of people looking after the community are decreasing, as an example. This is one issue. Or as an example, for the community to feel like they're invested in a project, it needs to have everyone participating as much as possible within the project. Right now we have a wonderful garden refurb project, as an example. If there's only 20 people and it's the same 20 people that are looking after that project, then it doesn't feel like a community project. It should be that there at least is one representative from every family participating in that project, irrespective of whether they like the project or they don't. It doesn't matter whether you like to get your hands dirty with mud or not. It doesn't matter whether you're interested in gardening or not, or permaculture, it doesn't matter. For the whole community to feel like project belongs to everyone, someone from the family has to participate. That's how we become organized. That's how we have cooperation, coexistence. The Quran says that it should be that I'm capable of walking into the house of my friend and eating from your fridge and you're not feeling offended by it. And vice versa. You can come up at any time and we can talk and sit down and be friends with each other. That's the level of organization. But if we only have the same 20 people participating in the community in every event, what happens tomorrow? The community dissipates. It dies out. It requires investment from everyone. And we've mentioned this before, that every person has a talent, has a skill set. One of the things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says within the Quran, وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. Do not waste. If you have a talent or a skill set, but it's not being used in the way of the community, then it is going to waste. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifted that to you and I for a purpose. It may be that you don't want to get your hands dirty, but you know, mashallah, how to be able to cook very well. And the volunteers need a good lunch after being out, digging up the garden. That's your skill set. You have no less participated than anyone else. Can you see? The community has to be organized in a way that is built off the back of everyone's coexistence, everyone's cooperation, everyone's participation, because otherwise everything dissipates. Last hadith from our 10th Imam Ali al-Hadi salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma sallam. This is actually a hadith from his deathbed, but I won't narrate it from the perspective of his deathbed because we're celebrating his birth anniversary. One of the companions came to our 10th Imam alayhi salam and said, leave me with some advice. Subhanallah. Can you imagine meeting with Imam Ma'soom in his last hours? Imam says, I will give you such advice that after it, you won't need anything else after it. That's a weighty statement from Imam Ma'soom, salamullahi alayhi. Imam says, I heard from my father al-Jawad, who heard from his father al-Rida, who heard from his father al-Kadhim, who heard from his father al-Sadiq, who heard from his father al-Baqir, who heard from his father al-Sajjad, who heard from his father al-Hussein, who heard from his father Ali ibn Abi Talib, who heard from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa sallam. Faith, true faith, is that which the heart acknowledges and the action partakes in. Faith, Iman, is not simply in here. Iman is proved by amal. Now look at that. The Imam could have just said it from himself, the hadith. He wanted to show you that every one of the ma'soomeen have narrated this hadith to their son. How important. He didn't skip. He didn't go, in my divine knowledge, I know Rasulullah said it, and that's where it ended. Nobody narrated it after. No, the divine chain of narration, the golden chain of narration. Every one of the Imam Ma'soomeen have said this. Iman is something that the heart acknowledges, but that is proved by amal, by your action of that. This is how the community has to be organized. Tonight, when you and I think about our 10th Imam alayhi salam, think about the way in which he organized his ummah, how he organized it all the way from top to bottom, and also the way in which he expected all members of the community to follow and participate in that organization. And we can learn a lot from this for our own time, but especially for ourselves to organize ourselves accordingly, and for us to be able to think about where we would like our own communities to go in the coming generation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasten the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, to allow us to be alongside him at all times in our life and in our death. If we are to pass away from this world before his coming, Ya Allah, raise us from our graves so that we can partake in the victories of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. We ask you, Ya Allah, grant us the ziyarah of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam fi dunya wal akhirah. Whatever our hajat are, Ya Allah, accept them bihaqqi Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam. And we ask you, help us to be able to organize our communities in a way that it goes from strength to strength, for us to be able to plug the gaps, and for us to be able to benefit one another through our cooperation and our coordination. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the opportunity to die in the love of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In honor of our 10th Imam Ali al-Hadi, please conclude this discussion with 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحسنتم، بارك الله فيكم.